Today we're going to talk about digital media and things that we can do to leverage the power of the internet and some of the tools that are being created, and we're going to be moving quickly. So I know that we're not all at the same level here, so this is a broad overview. There's some things that you may pick up and go, oh, that's an idea that I might take back home, and then many of the other things may just be things you know, but they're good reinforcement. Remember how we were talking about on the first day? It's still good to get reinforced on things that are fundamentally sound, right? So with that, we're going to talk about the internet. There's internet strategies, there's social media strategies, there is podcast strategies, and a variety of things that we're going to look into today. Cutting edge technologies, AI, data-driven insights that change the landscape of fundraising and building your organization. Best practices for reaching your constituency and building support. How you can craft really compelling and exciting messaging. And just capture the potential that is available to us. So some of it may be just being exposed to some of these things is the beginning step, but some of you may be even more advanced where you're utilizing these things and having some success. So the first thing we want to do is understanding the playing field. In 2023, there was over 5 billion people were online, and there's over 7 billion people on the planet. And just as a side note, I remember very clearly back in maybe 2010, I was meeting with a man out in California, and he said there's 6 billion people on the planet right now. I was like, yeah, that's a big number. And he said, that's actually the same number that has lived throughout human history. They've calculated this, from the beginning of Adam and Eve on through. 6 billion people have lived up until 2010, but in 2010, there's 6 billion people alive. But it didn't take that long to get over 7 billion. It's an amazing thing that God keeps us all in order. And it's just, again, perspective in my mind that he has a very clear plan and outline of where this is all going. But technology is a part of that, and people are using it. 65% of the world's population uses all these various online tools, including mobile phones, obviously. That's 80% plus. And these are smartphones largely, so they're seeing images and videos and all those sorts of things. And the world spends close to 12 billion hours. That's about 1.4 million years on social platforms each day. So there's, 5 billion social media users around the globe as of last fall. And the average person spends about 2.5 hours per day using social media. And it's not just kids, just in case we want to say, oh, that young generation, they're terrible. It's all of us. So 9 out of 10 internet users utilize social media each month. So we can confidently declare that the world is online intergenerationally. So again, if you're thinking maybe that's the younger generation, yes, it is the younger generation, but it's also the older generation. So let's use some methods and tools that are appropriate for the time that we're living in to advance the gospel. So before we get too deep into that, I just wanted to revisit what we're doing here and kind of make sure we're centered. Well, the Bible doesn't specifically mention digital media, of course, and fundraising methods like that, but the principles apply. They can be applied to fundraising, to building your team, to going shopping, all sorts of things. So we are with the backdrop of that, I recalled the stewardship principle of that all of us have a responsibility to be good stewards of what we've been given. And in the context of fundraising, what does that typically mean? That means stewarding your relationships well. You got to take good care of your relationships. And there is accountability, interestingly enough. And any of you that remember the parable of the talents, the last servant said that he just went and buried the talent, and he perceived that the ruler was evil, and therefore he didn't deserve to spend any time or energy on that. And that was a mistake. But the others multiplied everything that they had at their fingertips to bring more. So that's what we're striving to do, is to utilize the tools that we have at our disposal to build and grow. And it's exciting, it's energizing to grow. You're either growing or you're shrinking every day. You can't stay exactly perfect. It's impossible to do. So, and then I talked a little bit yesterday about generosity. Each of us is, in large measure, you're a shepherd, you're a pastor. So when you're talking with your constituency, your team, or possible partners or donors, you are like a pastor. You're shepherding them toward a spirit of generosity. And this is a great verse. We love this verse. And I told you about, did I tell you? I can't keep this clear, but did I tell you about our church that we went to, that they had us cheer every time we were going to take offering? That was a hoot. Each of you should give what you've decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Every time you read through the book of Acts, don't you get energized? God was doing miracles. The church was gathered. They were sharing resources with each other. It was just exhilarating, right? That is what we want to strive for. And that is, in large measure, why we come together here at ELF. To come together, to be energized, to meet new people, to start to collaborate in ways that we didn't in the past, and to pray for God's favor and to pray for God's blessing. I don't think we have any of these kind of people in here. Slugards. If you're a sluggard, raise your hand. I didn't think so. Sluggard's appetite is never filled, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you'll receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you're serving. I love Colossians 3:17. Whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. It's the same type of verse as that last one. Finally, we have gratitude. Give thanks in all circumstances. This is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Okay, so website optimization, social media, email, and podcast. And then we're going to talk about AI, just because that's been building momentum over the last 2-3 months in a way that's unavoidable. So I snuck it in there. This is basics, and I know I've seen some websites of some of you that I've met with, and you have really fabulous websites, and I commend you for that. But it is an important part of your brand. You have to spend time and energy on your church website, on your ministry's website, on your movement. That's just really important. And to the degree that the links are broken and things are misspelled, that's a problem, because it's not going to instill confidence in people about your organization. So you're going to want to spend time and energy on that. Optimization is going to be search engine stuff. You want people to be able to find you easily. Those tools are available too. Type in search engine optimization and you can get help there. And for the people that are fundraising, make sure you don't hide your donate button or your give now button. There's a lot of research on the best and most effective ways to fundraise, just purely fundraising in your letters, your emails, your website. Make sure the donate button is easy to find. It's in a different color. There's a lot of examples of that. Easy for visitors to find information about their volunteer efforts, all those things. One of the organizations I was with, we had a password protected portal for the volunteers that could come in and get resources, and they knew how to use it, except they couldn't remember their password. But I can't remember my password. I got 27 of them now. So that's a problem for everybody. So make it easy for people to recover their password, because you don't want to make hurdles and barriers in front of everybody. Just make it as seamless as possible. We talked a little bit about visuals and about visual media yesterday. That's really important, that you have really engaging video and photos. And people is a good thing. Landscape scene's fine, but people like to see people smiling. How many of you are using social media in your ministry, your organization? Raise them high. Great. Everybody's on, but they're not all on the same platform. So think through, what's the goal? In most everything that we're doing, we got to start with the goal in mind. There's a variety of different places to pitch your flag in the ground. If you get on LinkedIn and start posting stories and stuff like that, you may have a different crowd, but you might experiment with something, because that might be the business crowd, and there's Christians in business, and you start to refine your strategy there. Visuals, hashtags, interactive content. Look and see what's working that you see that's working with somebody else, and don't be afraid to just try some things. Of course, there's email marketing. It's still something we're using, but these things are shifting and changing all the time, so you can't just settle on one. You can just constantly be watching for what's working. But you're going back to yesterday's time together, it's very important that you're organized and that you have your data in one place. So your email list should be in the same place as your donor addresses and zip codes, and all these things should be in one place. One spreadsheet, don't have 12 of them because things are going to start falling through the cracks. But you want to build your lists of donors that you know are part of your, they're in, because again, I'll reinforce that it's better to keep a current person that's supporting you than to try to get new people. With communication, we want to always be attuned to, and I say this often, put yourself in their shoes, and if you don't know what their shoes feel like, just ask them, how does this feel to you? Back when I was raising money at ADF, we sent out monthly mail, and it was planned 6 months in advance. These letters were up to 12 to 14 pages long, and people constantly were telling me, I don't like that. I feel like we're wasting paper. I don't even read the first paragraph, let alone 14 pages. The problem was our vendor that was doing direct response mail was saying, those are the highest performing, because people get them and they feel like there's a lot of substance there, and so they think this must be something that needs money. So how do you balance that? Well, what we did was we took our major donors that were very important and we needed to listen to them, and we started sending them different mail, just a brief one-pager from the president. Here's this month's activities, so that we weren't offending them. You don't want to do that, but yet you want to get the performance out of it. So email is much the same. You don't want to get spammed. That won't be good. And some of you, do any of you use HubSpot? It's a big marketing enterprise system. HubSpot will put clamps on you if you start sending out to names that don't know you and don't recognize you, then they'll impose limits on what you can do. So you just have to treat people with respect. People are opting into email nowadays more often, and the more you can personalize all your communications, the better off you're going to be. If it says, Dear Partner, that's not as good as Dear Joe and Beverly. Way better. But what's worse is if it says Joe and Shirley. That's not good. So you got to get it right, but it is better to personalize. Compelling subject lines, if any of you studied open rates, then it's going to be the subject line that everybody talks about. It's kind of like clickbait on any social media thing is the most interesting, compelling, like breaking news. But you don't want to overuse those things, but be aware. So podcasts, anybody using podcasts? Oh, great, one person, two. This is exciting, 2.5. This is quite a phenomenon, how this has developed. I never saw this coming. I didn't understand why people would sit and listen to long-form content every day, but it is quite interesting. So Al Mohler is my favorite. So he's the head, he's part of the Southern Baptist Convention in the US, but he is just so articulate, so smart, and he has a daily briefing, and each day it is news and events around the world from a biblical world perspective. So he just says, how are these events going to impact us as the church? I love that podcast. But there's so many of them, and it's probably good for you guys to start to tune into some of these. When you're driving to work or riding your bike, you can listen to a good podcast. Joe Rogan, some people are saying he's coming close to knowing the Lord because he's had all sorts of, and he's a celebrity, but he's had all sorts of interesting people as guests on his show. But you could get all the whole array, including somebody that's probably not healthy to listen to. But people are thinking he's closing in on becoming a believer. He's got the information. He's very clear on it. He can articulate it back. So if you want, pray for him. That would be interesting to see him glorify the Lord. But, look, I don't depend on celebrities. We know that. I've seen it happen in baseball when I was playing. Somebody came to know the Lord, and the church quickly surrounded him and put him up high and said, this is our guy. And then our guy went and did something terrible because he's a human being. So we do want to be careful about that. But that's a pretty good size listener audience there. 14.5 million. And then I think that's daily, by the way. That's not a month. Just a quick thing about podcasts. So again, how should you format it? What should you do first? Let's explore this for a second. Data that I pulled, says that there's over 465 million podcast listeners worldwide right now. And it's projected to be well over 500,000 this year. And the average listener spends a whopping 7 hours a week glued to their favorite podcast app. Episodes between 20 and 40 minutes reign supreme. 20 and 40 minutes. That's the good timeline. You cater to busy schedules, yes, but they tend to listen to them while they're driving to work or those sorts of things. So you start with the end in mind. Who's your audience? What do you want to convey? What's interesting? Build your audience. Don't exert too much energy on one thing, but it's worth thinking about, right, when you leave here. Podcast listeners transcend gender, with women slightly edging out men. 48% women. Pam, do you listen to podcasts? Starting today? You listen to neuroscience and all these things and spiritual ones, yeah. How about you guys? Do you listen to any podcasts? Yeah. All right. And it's not an American phenomenon, just so we know. This is all around the globe. Sweden and Norway leading the way. How about that? Didn't know that. Video podcasts are on the rise. Again, I have no category for this. I don't understand why people would sit and watch a video podcast of Joe Rogan and his guests sitting there talking, or Howard Stern and his guests sitting there talking, but it happens quite a bit. So if you can develop some interesting format with an interesting person, you should give it a try. And then you can use your other social media channels to send it out and say, hey, I think you'll be interested to watch this. You had a special guest on that, an amazing story that they're telling. Or, if it's students, something where their lives changed. Those things are worth trying out. Spotify and Apple Podcasts are the most popular. And peak listening time is morning. And people, of course, not surprisingly, listen to them on their mobile devices. Okay, just a minute about storytelling. You guys didn't get to participate in my best workshop, which was storytelling in the digital realm, but I'll give you just a couple of little teasers. So everything we do is telling stories, right? We know that. But compelling narratives, let the audience give you feedback on what's compelling. Instead of telling them, this is the most amazing story you've ever heard, and then you give it to them and they go, well, I didn't really think that. I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was the most amazing. And I have people approach me regularly saying, this is a story that must be told. We need to make a movie out of this. And I go, no, I don't think so. So let your audience tell you what's compelling. But it's such a great way to communicate what you do is to think through the stories. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to structure those in a second. Use all multimedia elements, video, photos, testimonials, graphics to evoke emotions and connect with your audience on a deeper level. Because, let's face it, when people are making decisions about supporting you, it rarely comes from a lot of analysis and intellectual, fervor. It came from a place in their heart, their emotion. So appeal to people's emotion, but satisfy their mind. Does that make sense? Appeal to their emotion, but satisfy their mind. All right, we've got, first thing, you have to have a great story. And again, I'd test out if you have a great story before you say, this is a great story. Now, this is David and Nathan, when Nathan confronted him. And so I popped this into my image generator, and this is what came out. It cracks me up. David looks really aggressive, but he's got wonderful hair going. What's that?
He was in the gym quite a lot.
Yes, he went to the gym regularly, and he was a warrior, so probably. Tremendous shampoo commercial. That's funny. That was a really sobering scene, though, right? Nathan came to David, dramatic scene. Makes you sit down and go, oh my goodness. And it did make David sit down and go, oh my goodness, I got problems. But it's a great story. Fundamentals. So the story spine is a formula that's just helpful to run through your grid before you start telling any of your stories. It could be a 45-minute story or a 30-second story. It goes, once upon a time, there was blank. Every day, blank. One day, blank. Because of that, blank. Until finally, blank. Now, that's a story spine formula to go, how can I fit this in here so that I have good rise of emotion and I finish on the climax? And if you're telling a story and you don't know the climax of your story, whether it's 30 seconds, 3 minutes, or an hour, you don't know where the climax is, then I just tell you, you don't have a story yet, you have some ideas. Okay, so just jot that down, know where your climax is if you care. You need to, and structure is, and it's, again, a simple thing to keep in mind, but does your story have a beginning, a middle, and an end point? Grab their attention early, because they're going to go to some other page quickly. This is the now generation. We're all in it too. So action is good. Action dialogue is good. Because I'm in the Christian film world, we spend a lot of time diagnosing all the failed Christian movies we made in the past. But Hollywood has made a lot of failures too. So it's not just Christians that make bad movies. They're everywhere. But oftentimes they violate some basic rules. And they violate those rules because the people didn't even think about it. So if you know, here's some general fundamental structures of telling our story, then you're probably going to have a better chance for consistent success. And then you might have one go viral. So anyway, that's just a couple of tidbits there for you. There's a great book that I have read multiple times, and it happens to be on script writing, but it's not a big, long book. But he talks about the structure for writing a screenplay, and it explains that there are 12 particular types of stories. So again, it would be helpful if you know, what is this that we're making here? If this is a testimonial story, again, what's the goal? Just ask yourself, what's the goal? So that you know where the climax of this thing is. And then if you can delight your audience, which is the hardest part, delight them, then that will be a great thing. You're trying to give them the expected outcome, but with an unexpected way to get there. And this is, again, where I really enjoy listening to comedians, because they spend a lot of time working on their jokes, because they have to misdirect their audience so that they can bring them back for the joke. That's the basis of good humor. So your storytelling is going to do some of those same sorts of things. Okay, so some of the tools that we have at our disposal. Now, again, these things, many of you are using them. Just keep in mind that you want to use every tool that you can, but you also want to strive for excellence, because your brand and your name and all those things are part of the equation here. So if you find out that there's new ways that people can give, it might give you an idea to reach an audience through that way. If you're going to send a message out to all of your 80-year-old people and say, Venmo us $100 today, there's probably not going to be a great response. Do people write checks in Europe? Cash? How do they give? Wire? Credit cards?
Cards line, cards.
Oh. Okay. That's interesting. I should have asked that earlier. So what is most popular? Because you're going to, that's good that you know that, because then you know if you're asking them to do something out of the normal, it's going to be difficult. And like I mentioned before, it's up to you to be creative about the ways that people can give. And lots of times people don't know that they can give an old car that's just sitting around. They can actually give that to your organization, and then you can monetize it. Is there any incentive for people in Europe to give? Do they get any kind of charitable tax break or any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
There is something? Yeah. So just monitor what those things are, and usually the people that are more wealthy are going to be more sophisticated on that stuff. But if you understand it, at least you can help somebody be able to give generously, and they'll be grateful for it. Okay, now data-driven. This is just goes back to understanding your constituency and understanding where to put your energy. So you're going to want to track key performance indicators to measure the effectiveness of your fundraising efforts and make data-driven decisions based on things like sales funnel. Does everybody know what a sales funnel is? Okay, so you put a Facebook ad on, and there's a click rate Facebook will provide that to you. They have a dashboard of analytics. Google also has Google Analytics for ads that you might use through Google. And it shows that somebody came to your website, or they clicked on the ad and they came to your website. And then they spent 30 seconds on your website and disappeared. Okay, so that sales funnel is telling you information about who the audience is that's coming, what did they experience there, did they click on any of the images or any of those things? And it's worth understanding this as you get more sophisticated in your ministry, or even your church, for that matter. It doesn't matter. It's interesting to know what's going on. If you are not using data, then you're flying blind. You're just flying by the Holy Spirit, which is a good thing to do. Conversion rates is when somebody gets to a certain moment in time where they get asked, are you ready to give a gift? And they go, I don't think so. So you've converted them, or they did not convert. Or you might have a trial for some sort of a product, or maybe your podcast, you go, we want subscribers, and you have a little trial period, and then when the trial period's up, you're going to charge them €1 a month, and they fall out. That's part of the conversion rate, so you'll monitor that to understand it. And then retention, of course, is keeping your people. And average gift size, there's actually a much longer list to understand, but a larger organization is going to be more tuned into some of these things. I love this quote by Edward Deming. In God we trust, all others must bring data. And he's largely considered the father of the modern age of data analytics. So these tools are available. Some of you may be ready for them. Some of you are more advanced in those things. But it's good to be exposed to the fact that there are tools out there. There's more and more data that's determining who succeeds and who doesn't succeed. So this is just the sort of 5 stages toward a data-driven culture in your organization. The data denial says organization starts with, I can't read it, distrust data and don't use it. Then there's the indifference. The company has no interest in whether data is collected or not. And then there's data aware. The business or organization is collecting data and might use it for monitoring, but it does not have based decisions on that data. And then there's the data informed. Managers use data selectively to aid decision making. And then there's a data-driven company, and data plays a role, a central role, in as many decisions as possible across the organization. So where does your organization fall on this spectrum here? It's good to just identify it and know it. In fact, this sort of reminds me of one of the speakers that's been here for years, a man named Bob Beal, really sharp consultant to some large organizations. And Bob Beal has, among many tools, he's got one that calls people levels of thinking. And the first level is a person that, and this is most of the population, that looks around and says, everybody thinks like me, or they will when they grow up. And that's a level 1 thinker. Level 2 thinker says, oh, everybody doesn't think like me. And it's kind of a revelation. And a level 3 thinker says, everybody doesn't think like me, and that's a good thing. Now we've got a little different perspective. We're getting some different ways to come at problems. Some people like art, some science, mathematics, all that. And then a level 4 thinker is the height, and that is, it's okay to be me. I know you're thinking that's not as exciting as you wanted it to be, but the point would be, I'm okay with who God made me. God made lots of people that are thinking about things differently, and it's fine. And I have peace and contentment in that. So anyway, this reminds me a little bit of that, where if you're using data effectively, then you should give yourself a pat on the back. Okay, AI. As I mentioned, if you're not using data, you're probably starting to fly blind as a pilot, because so much of what we do today is data-driven stuff. It's digital stuff. There's more and more electronic communication. So if you're not using data, you're really having a hard time discerning what is working and what isn't. What are the trends? What are the preferences? How you segment your audience to deliver the right message to the right crowd. Giving histories, all sorts of things are data-driven decisions on that you need to be aware of. Artificial intelligence. These are just some of the engines that are out there that people are using, and there's many, many more. Like I mentioned, I use ChatGPT, and ChatGPT has a store where you can add in different things, and then you can get the best of what those things are. They may be focused in areas like healthcare sector. They might be focused on image generation, or even now we're getting to where there's video production. I showed you the one yesterday, the Warsaw. I did it in 12 minutes. So if you need video, which everybody needs video, start, messing around in here. Coding is a big one, and I'm not a software engineer at all, but these things are changing the world because of how quick they can do coding, and anything that is automated or anything that you can write down a process for a system, that will largely be taken by a computer in the future. So there'll still be humans involved. Back in the days of when the first automobiles were being made, there was a big uproar by the buggy whip union. So does anybody know what a buggy whip is? Well, a buggy whip is the long cord leather whip that they used to whip the horse so that he would go down the road. And they were upset because their way of life was going to be damaged by these automobiles. So they formed a coalition, and they had a big strike, and they tried to appeal to the legislature and all these things, but you could not stop. You could not stop the momentum of technology. So this is the same thing. I just say, don't worry about complaining about it, just start understanding it a little bit better. How can AI enhance your fundraising? That's what we all want to know. If you're raising money, you go, I need to raise money. Why do I even spend any time on AI? These are the sorts of questions you're going to start asking yourself. Automating processes. Again, anything you can write down, which isn't a relationship, but it's a system, then AI can help. And I would say it goes to, what's the system? If you have a monthly letter that you're going to write, then start using AI to do it. I can jump on my computer and show you a bunch of examples of things that I put in there to say, give me a summary of the story of David and Nathan. Wonderful summary, because it's pulling from everything on the internet, which is all the Bible theologians and all that, but it's not always right. So we got to have our head on straight. Keep your head on straight. It's best when you know what the facts are, and then it can give you something and you go, I can validate this. But there have been some pretty high profile failures too. And one of those was that I'm aware of, because my daughter's a data analyst, is Amazon used AI to go out to hire new recruits to come into their software development team. And as it turned out, the computers started zeroing in on all the past profiles of people that had been in that job, and they inadvertently started filtering out any woman that was applying. Anything that had any resume that said like women's volleyball team or anything, out. And they didn't realize it. They didn't know until it got late. And then they tried to fix it. And then they said, we can't even depend that we fixed this at this point. So they wasted a lot of time and money and probably missed on a couple of candidates because they just put it into the computer and then started going. So that is, there's a lot of, and did I tell you guys about the chessboard that I was trying to do? Okay, on the first night, our speaker, John Dixon, had an image of a chessboard with the black pieces and one white pawn. And I was like, that's so cool. I could do a whole sermon on that because it's one lone pawn against the whole army. But I know enough about chess to know that if there's a pawn advanced that far into enemy territory, the white's probably going to win. They're probably going to win this because they're going to get somebody to take them but put them out of position, and then they can capitalize on this. Okay, so I was so excited. I went back to my room the other night. I typed in on ChatGPT, give me an image of a chessboard with a single pawn and all the black pawns in front of it, and poof, I wish I could show you all the images. It'd take me too long to get it. I'm like, no, that's not gonna work. There's 75 black pieces there. That's not right. And then the next, I said, no, I want the actual number of chess pieces there. So then And then the next image came up and the squares were all jacked up. There was 2 blacks next to each other, a white and a rectangle. And I'm like, okay. So now I was going down because I wasn't able to get it to do what I wanted it to do. But there's so many things where I've typed it in and it quickly gives me something. I go, this is amazing. I can't even believe my eyes. So it's worth starting to spend some time in there because, and you'll have to do your own research and you have to decide, is it worth it to automate any of our systems at this stage of our development? But AI can help with your database. You can upload your own database in there and say, tell me about my database. You'll be amazed. How many of these people live in concentrated areas? What do they live in wealthy areas? It's an amazing thing. It's just amazing. So that would be insights that you can get. So I just urge you to start to toy around with it and understand what the capabilities are.